Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to session 5, titled Urban Form and the Politics of Space. This morning, we look at the city not just as a built environment, but as a living negotiation, where architecture, planning decisions, and social forces intersect to shape how people live, move, aspire, and struggle. We begin with Avijit Mukul Kishore's Vertical City, a film that examines a Mumbai of staggering contrasts. Through its quietly observant lens, the film studies the emergence of vertical high-rise living as a response to density, aspiration, and market-driven development. Yet Kishore does more than just document the architectural typology. He reveals the human consequences of these shifts, the social frictions, the configurations of community, and the stark inequalities embedded in the transformation of land into commodity. Vertical City asks us to confront a fundamental question. When cities grow upward, who rises with them and who is left behind? In conversation with this, we present 3 Nagari short films that explore the politics of urban space from different vantage points. A City Within a City looks at the internal worlds nestled inside the urban fabric, settlements, communities, and micro-neighborhoods that function with their own rhythms and rules. It highlights the self-organized systems that evolve when formal planning fails to meet lived needs. Adrushya Niwasi, meaning invisible residents, foregrounds populations who remain unacknowledged in the official imagination of the city. Through intimate storytelling, it reveals how invisibility, whether bureaucratic, economic, or spatial, limits access to rights, opportunities, and dignity, and how these communities nonetheless carve out their own forms of belonging. Finally, Pipe Dream follows the struggles around basic urban infrastructure, using the story of water access as a lens to illustrate how power operates through the distribution of essential resources. It reminds us that even something as simple as a pipeline can shape the geography of privilege and exclusion. Together, these films question the neutrality of urban form. They show us that cities are not just built, they are contested. Every tower, street, corner, settlement, and pipe tells a political story. The screenings will be followed by Sourav, in discussion with Avijit Mukul Kishore, director of Vertical City. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin. Thank you.
Mr. Pandey,
it's a city still on the edge.
The world inner city of Ahmedabad, there is an eerie calm on the surface. But violence is just around the corner in an area where Hindus and Muslims live cheek by jowl. Defense Minister just told us there is a brigade another brigade is arriving.
2 days after the Sabarmati Express was burnt in Godhra, 3 hours from Ahmedabad,
The morning after a night of carnage.
Visiting all the sensitive areas.
the police have recovered bodies of at least 12 children and 10 adults.
आमतौर पर अब लोग उन इलाकों में शरण ले रहे हैं जहां उनके अपने समुदाय के लोग ज्यादा हैं
60 people have been killed in Mumbai. There are reports of violence.
अहमदाबाद में बहुत सारी जगहों पर इस तरह से दंगे हुए जिसमें बड़े पैमाने पे लोगों का नरसंहार हुआ। उसके बाद लोगों ने अपनी लाइफ और सिक्योरिटी को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक ऐसी जगह पे कि जहाँ पे उनकी लाइफ की सिक्योरिटी रहे वहाँ रहना पसंद किया। तो जिसमें जुहापुरा सबसे बड़ा जगह रहा जहाँ पे लोग एक साथ आकर रहने लगे बहुत सारे तादाद में दंगों के बाद। वो अहमदाबाद के आप सैटेलाइट और जुहापुरा जो कि दोनों एडजॉइनिंग है, आप दोनों को जब कंपेयर करेंगे तो दोनों में जमीन आसमान का फर्क आप देखेंगे कि अगर रेलवे लाइन के इस तरफ डेवलपमेंट हो सकता है तो रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ डेवलपमेंट क्यों नहीं हो सकता है? रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ गार्डन्स क्यों नहीं बन सकते हैं? रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ स्विमिंग पूल्स, लाइब्रेरीज क्यों नहीं बन सकती हैं?
મુસ્લિમ કોમ્યુનિટી એક એવી છે કે સરકાર જોડે ના લડી ના ઝઘડીની પોતાના બલબૂતા ઉપર જીવવાવાળી પબ્લિક છે, બરાબર. આજ સુધી આટલા ટાઈમમાં આટલા જે અપરાધો થયા છે, જે બન્યું સરકારના કાનૂન ઉપર એનો અમલ કર્યો, એને અમલ કરીને એને સ્વીકાર કર્યું આજ સુધીની અંદર, બરાબર. તે છતાં એમને પણ સમજવું જોઈએ કે આ લોકો કોઈ માંગણી વગર નથી કરતા, તો આપણે ફરજ બને છે. આ એક જરૂરી છે, રોડ, રસ્તો, ગટર અને લાઇટ અને પાણી. એ તો પછી 4 સવા 4 આવશો, 4 સવા 4 આવશે, 3:30 જ વાગે. શાંતિથી બનાવો.
શાંતિથી તો એક કઈ નહીં બનાવી શકું.
તમારા માટે ઘર એટલે શું?
મારા માટે ઘર તો એક સપનું છે કે અગર માલિક મને આપે ને તો હું અહીંથી બહાર નીકળીને સારી જગ્યાએ, વ્યવસ્થિત જગ્યાએ, આગળ ફ્લેટ છે અથવા કોઈ પ્લોટિંગ પડતા હોય અહીંયા પ્લોટ પાડીને પર્સનલ, મતલબ આપણું ટેનામેન્ટ ટાઈપ.
આપણે ગામડામાં કેવું મોટું ફળિયાવાળું મકાન હોય એ રીતનું, ને અલગ અલગ રૂમ હોય. તો બચ્ચાઓના બી એમ કે અલગ, મારા 3 બચ્ચા છે તો એમ કે અમે ચલો ઉંમર થઈ ગઈ તો આપણે નથી કહેતા કે બાળક મોટા થાય એટલે બધાનું પર્સનલ અલગ હોય, પણ એ હોય ત્યારે હોય, ના હોય તો એકમાં બી ગુજારો કરવો પડે, નાનામાં બી. પણ મોટાનું સપનું છે અમારું.
यहाँ तरह तरह की अफवाहें फैलती हैं, इसलिए हम कोई ऐसा कुछ रिस्क लेना नहीं चाहते हैं. वो लोग नदी की बॉर्डर पे हैं, ये कोर्ट के बाजू में वो लोग रहते हैं, हम यहाँ रहते हैं, मगर वो अफवाहों को हम कोई नंबर मैसेजेस
अफवाहें भी आ रही है कि अभी 2 दिन पहले सब अफवाहें आ रही थी ट्रक में सब लोग निकले हैं, इधर आएंगे उधर आएंगे, इसलिए सब लोग क्या है कि अपने प्रोटेक्शन के लिए इधर जाग रहे हैं. वैसे कोई प्रॉब्लम की बात नहीं है.
Now we have our own supermarkets. This is a new one for 6 months. This is our own party plot. Our own party plot there. घर में न जाऊंगा गाली, आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती, आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती, आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती, कहेंगे सारे खुशी
मुंबई ये सिर्फ एक शहर नहीं बल्कि एक कहानी है। ये कहानी इतनी मशहूर है कि काल्पनिक सी लगती है। इस कहानी में कई पात्र हैं और इन पात्रों की भी अपनी अपनी कहानियां हैं। इन्हीं में से एक महत्वपूर्ण पात्र प्रवासी मजदूर है। देश भर से लाखों मजदूर अपनी मजबूरियां और सपने लेकर इस कहानी का हिस्सा बनने शहर आ जाते हैं। आज हम जिस समृद्ध मुंबई शहर को जानते हैं वह इन मजदूरों द्वारा बनाया हुआ है। मुंबई और ठाणे लगभग 1 करोड़ प्रवासियों का घर है, जिनमें से अधिकांश मजदूर कंस्ट्रक्शन और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जैसे क्षेत्रों में काम करते हैं। स्ट्रीट हॉकर्स, टैक्सी ड्राइवर, मेट्रो निर्माण श्रमिक आदि शहर के अभिन्न अंग है, पर हम उन्हें देखकर भी अनदेखा कर देते हैं। हम आर्किटेक्ट्स और अर्बन डिज़ाइनर्स की कल्पनाओं को ये मजदूर ही वास्तविकताओं में बदलते हैं, पर वे कहाँ रहते हैं, कैसे रहते हैं, हम उनके बारे में नहीं सोचते। देश में लगभग 92% कामगार अनौपचारिक क्षेत्र में काम करते हैं, जिनके पास न तो कोई लिखित कॉन्ट्रैक्ट और न कोई राजनीतिक प्रतिनिधित्व है। इन्हीं कुछ कारणों की वजह से वे बेहतर लिविंग और वर्किंग कंडीशंस की मांग नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। जिस शहर को उन्होंने बनाया वे उसी में अदृश्य है। अप्रैल 2020 में कोरोना महामारी के बीच ये अदृश्य मजदूर जो दीवारों के पीछे चुपचाप काम करते थे, सड़क पर नजर आए। शहर को पहली बार पता चला कि शहर को बनाने वाले कौन हैं। अचानक आई बेरोजगारी के कारण किराया देना या 2 वक्त का खाना जुटाना नामुमकिन हो गया था और वो मजबूरी में शहर को छोड़ अपने गांव चले गया। इन्हीं लाखों मजदूरों में से एक असगर अली है। असगर अली मोहम्मद नसीम और अन्य 2 साथियों के साथ धारावी के एक बैग सिलाई कारखाने में रहते और काम करते हैं।
ज़मीन तो मेरे पास 1 कट्ठा भी नहीं, 1 धुर भी नहीं है। हम लोग झोपड़ी टांग के रह रहे गांव के अंदर में, वो भी भाड़े पर रहता हूँ।
फैमिली को लाएंगे तो यहाँ कहाँ बाद में बाथरूम का टेंशन, रहेगी कहाँ, नहाएगी कहाँ। जैसे मेरे माँ बाप तकलीफ उठाए वैसे हम लोग भी तकलीफ उठा रहे हैं। 6 साल का लड़का अभी तक कम से कम उसको पढ़ना लिखना चाहिए, मगर उतना हम लोग की कमाई नहीं है। हम लोग 12,000 रुपया कमाने वाले, 7,000 भाड़ा भर देंगे तो हम लोग फिर खाएंगे क्या चीज़।
टॉयलेट जाने में 20 मिनट लगता है, वहाँ भी 10-15 मिनट आपको वहाँ टॉयलेट के लिए इंतजार करना पड़ेगा। और वो नहीं निकला तो समझ लीजिए इसी जगह रहे। पेट खराब हो गया तो समझ लीजिए कि अंदर ही कारखाने के अंदर में हो जाएगा वो।
असल में गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से तो इतना बड़ा आपदा था जो कोरोना का, उसके बाद लॉकडाउन था, तो इसमें आप यकीन करो ना करो वो आपका मामला है, लेकिन हम लोगों को एक हॉस्पिटल की खिचड़ी के अलावा कभी कुछ नहीं मिला।
कहते सरकार को जाओ गाड़ी फ्री है। अरे गाड़ी फ्री किधर है? जो 500 रुपये की जगह पर 1000 रुपया ले ही रहा, तो फ्री किधर हो गया गाड़ी? पुलिस चौकी में गए हम लोग, फार्म भराने के लगे, वहाँ 200-200 रुपया लग गया। हमारे लोग का समझिए कि 6,000 रुपया खाली बम्बे पहुँचने में लग गया है।
प्रवासी संकट पर बढ़ते आलोचना के बीच सरकार ने जल्दबाजी में अफोर्डेबल रेंटल हाउसिंग कॉम्प्लेक्स स्कीम लॉन्च की।
प्रवासी मजदूर और शहरी गरीब के लिए जहां वो काम करते हैं शहरों में, वहां पर कम कीमत पर उनको किराए पर मकान मिल पाए, रहने की सुविधा मिल पाए।
गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से 10 रुपए का 10 पैसे का सहायता नहीं मिला, खाने को नहीं मिला तो घर कहाँ से देंगे ये लोग।
सरकार प्रवासी मजदूरों को शहरों में कम किराए पर सस्ते
इन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा त्याग इसके लिए किया
मजदूरों के रहने के लिए शहर को
और ये 5,000 करोड़ रुपए की
रेंटल हाउसिंग कॉम्प्लेक्स
विशेष सुविधा
इसके अलावा उद्योगों को
केवल इनके लिए, रेहड़ी ठेला लगाने वाले, पटरी पर सामान बेचने वाले श्रमिक साथी इनके लिए लेकर आए। ये 10,000 की इनको प्रति व्यक्ति सुविधा मिल सकती है, क्योंकि किसी को चाय बेचनी है।
इलीजा, अंसारी, भगत, महतो, ये हो गया राम सिपन्ना।
ठीक है, और कहीं रखा होगा इसका।
आपने वो नाम निकालने के लिए कहीं तो रखा होगा।
ठीक है, ये फाइल है ना, ये इधर रखो ऊपर, सुबह ले जाने वाला।
तो ये बता सकते हैं आपके पास कितने लोगों का रिकॉर्ड है?
हाँ, टोटल है 59 का है टोटल।
59 इंटू 5।
हाँ,
क्योंकि 59 कनेक्शन का है, एक कनेक्शन में 5 या 6 लोग हैं, तो अराउंड 300 के आसपास तो जा रहा है ना।
ये फाइलों का इम्पोर्टेंट है, ये तो जीवन है, मतलब हमारा पूरा सब कुछ इसी के ऊपर निर्भर है। अगर इसको कुछ नुकसान हुआ तो पूरा बस्ती को बहुत बड़ा नुकसान है। फिर से वो आरटीआई बनाना पड़ेगा, फिर से सरकारी रिकॉर्ड निकालना पड़ेगा। अब ये घूम गया तो सीधा बीएमसी में। अगर बीएमसी में भी कुछ फाइल घूमता तो वो हमको बोलते हैं कि आपके पास वो फाइल है तो हमें दे दीजिए ताकि हम उसका रिकॉर्ड फिर से बनाएं। ऐसा होता है। इसमें भी ने कंप्यूटर में भी सेव करके रखा उस चीज़ों को। रात को जब 2-3 बजे नींद टूट जाती है तो फिर मैं सोता नहीं हूँ, कहीं गहरी नींद ना लग जाए, ताकि सुबह अब ज़्यादा देर सो जाएंगे तो फिर पीने का पानी नहीं रहेगा तो दिन भर कैसे चलेगा। हेलो।
हेलो।
जी
हाँ, मैं बीएमसी वाटर डिपार्टमेंट से बोल रही हूँ।
जी जी जी
हाँ, ये आपके जो फाइल्स थे ना पेंडिंग,
जी
उसको प्रोसेस करना था, तो जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स वगैरह मिसिंग है मैं आपको इन्फॉर्म करती हूँ। आप जरा ऑफिस में आ सकते हो क्या?
जी 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 जी।
हाँ, आप कब आओगे?
3 बजे आऊँ?
ओके, यस। जो भी
ओके।
मिसिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स है मैं आपको ऐसे बताती हूँ, आप लेके आइए।
जी जी जी।
गावाच्या जातीनं घर सोडली, शहरी येऊन वस्ती बसवली, शहरी येऊन वस्ती बसवली, शहरी येऊन वस्ती बसवली. सडका नाल्यानं घर बांधली, कच्चारपट्टीची जिंदगी झाली, पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार, आमच्या पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार. अरे सत्तेच्या हातात पाण्याची टाकी, माणसं बघून पाणी कती, माणसं बघून पाणी कती, माणसं बघून पाणी कती. गोरगरिबाची हल्ले कती, बेघर म्हणून हकलून लाविती, पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार, आमच्या पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार. अरे इथं लढाई संपत नाही, माणसाला पाणी का मिळत नाही, माणसाला पाणी का मिळत नाही, माणसाला पाणी का मिळत नाही. जोवर आम्हा पाणी मिळत नाही, आखडचा माणूस लढत राही, जोवर आम्हा पाणी मिळत नाही, आखडचा माणूस लढत राही. पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार, आमच्या पाण्याची कहाणी ऐका हो सरकार.
जो जीवन हम जी रहे हैं उसमें एक मतलब नर्क जैसे ज़िंदगी जी रहे। लाइट नहीं, पानी नहीं, शौचालय नहीं, शिक्षा नहीं, और शिक्षित है तो भी वो जल्दी से उस नर्क से बाहर भाग जाना चाहता है। मम्मी है कहाँ है? गाँव में है। लक्ष्मी दिलीप भट्ट, सोम प्रकाश टाक, कल जो है उनका वोटिंग कार्ड और पैन कार्ड। बीएमसी के लोग आएंगे, नल के लिए कनेक्शन के लिए भरा है ना, वो चेक करने के लिए घर और डॉक्यूमेंट दोनों चेक करने के लिए आएंगे।
इधर का अपना लोग का
ये फाइल खत्म होने के बाद आपका आएगा। कल सुबह 10 बजे से 12 बजे तक घर में ही रहना। एक एक डॉक्यूमेंट निकालने के लिए 6-6 महीना गया, कभी कोई साल भर भी लग गया एक कागज़ निकालने के लिए। जब भी मैं कोई भी चीज़ के लिए, लाइट के लिए हो या पानी के लिए हो, या अगर एक पेपर भी मुझे मिलता था, मैं बहुत खुशी महसूस करता था। मैं ये समझता था कि बीएमसी का या गवर्नमेंट का एक जवाब तो मेरे पास आया, मतलब एक डॉक्यूमेंट तो आया बस्ती के लिए, भले वो अच्छी हो या बुरी हो, वो मेरे लिए मायने नहीं रखता। मायने ये रखता था कि मैंने पाया कुछ।
हेलो।
नमस्ते, मैं जयमती
हाँ।
बोल रहा हूँ। वही कल आया था, आपका मुलाकात नहीं हुई, ऑफिस में कोई भी मिला नहीं, तो मैं बोला
हाँ,
पूछ
मैं
लेता हूँ।
ट्रेनिंग में थी एक्चुअली। बोलिए
जी
ना।
जी। तो वही बोल रहा था पी फॉर्म का, और उसका लाइन का क्या हो गया है।
आप अभी आपका वो लिस्ट लेके आइए ना पी फॉर्म का।
जी
अपन
जी।
वो टैली करते हैं, ठीक है।
तो हर वक्त मतलब तलवार जो है हमारे गर्दन पे लटकी हुई रहती है,
हर आए
कभी
दिन
टूट
15 दिन
जाएगा।
में डेमोलेशन होता है।
हाँ, कब टूट जाएगा, कब टूट जाएगा, अभी क्या होगा, कहाँ जाएंगे, कैसे रहेंगे, ये सब दिमाग में चलते रहता है। फिर जो भी हमारे ऊपर पुलिस का दबाव आए या बीएमसी का दबाव आए, ऑफिसर का दबाव आए, तो हमको ऐसा लगता है कि ये सब कॉमन हो गया।
हम लोग ने बीच में अभी किया था, तभी हम लोग ने पाइप का एक कनेक्शन तोड़ने का प्लानिंग हो गया था, पर उन्होंने एग्री हो गए थे कि हम लोग 15 दिन में आपको कनेक्शन लगा के देंगे। तो जब तक उनको झटका नहीं कर लगता है तब तक वो कुर्सी से हिलते नहीं।
ये जयमती जी का तरीका अलग है।
वो शांत है, मैं शांत हूँ, क्योंकि इतने सालों से हम संघर्ष करते आ रहे हैं। हम कोई चोरी से तो नहीं मांग रहे। अगर चोरी का बोला तो तुरंत दे देगा वो कनेक्शन। यहाँ पे लाइट चोरी की बोला तो तुरंत उन्होंने दे दिया, और हम लीगल प्रोसीजर पे जाते तो हमको नहीं दे रहा।
जी, मैं जयमती बोल रहा
हाँ,
हूँ।
बोलिए ना।
वही हामी पत्र भेजे नहीं आपने।
अरे हाँ, वो रह गया एक्चुअली, वो अंजुम नहीं था ना। अब
जी
एक काम करो कि ऑफिस में से लोगे, अभी मैं जरा 2 दिन छुट्टी पे हूँ, तो
ठीक है।
जरा
तो
कलांतरे साहब।
लोग जो है इतने सालों से पानी के लिए तकलीफ़ झेल रहे हैं, मेरे पीछे हंसते हैं, क्या है पेपर जमा कर रहे हैं, कुछ होता तो है नहीं। और बहुत लोग जो है इस पानी के लिए बहुत कीमत चुकाने के भी तैयार है, लेकिन मैं जानता हूँ पानी सिर्फ पेपर वर्किंग से ही आएगा। यही चीज़ हमको समझ में आया कि रास्ता है, नहीं है ऐसा नहीं, उजाला है, लेकिन ढूंढने वाला चाहिए, उसमें रुके रहने वाला चाहिए।
With this conversation, we have Avijit Mukul Kishore in the audience with us, so the director. He will be in conversation with Sourav Sarangi, so I invite them both to please come to the stage. Sourav is an award-winning filmmaker. He put down his geologist's hammer to pick up a camera and tell stories. His journey began from Kanti, a small town in South Bengal, to become a fellow of the Film Independent LA in collaboration with the US Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. He has had a lot of his award-winning films screened both nationally and internationally. And of course, we have Mukul, who is a filmmaker, cinematographer, working in documentary and interdisciplinary moving image practices. He's also been a Nagari mentor in the past. With this, Saurav, if you can take forward the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvi. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be with Mukul. We often talk and chat when we meet, which seldom happens. So I want to begin like that and maybe then open up a few other things. I watched the film before, and today on a big screen, it makes a difference actually. But the first question as a filmmaker, as a practitioner, I always ask myself why I am doing it. What is my motivation? You know, what haunts me to make this film? And you are from Mumbai, and so I begin with this question. What really prompted you or forced you to make this film?
Okay, so I had been in Mumbai for over 15 years when I approached this subject. I'd been, even before I went to film school, you know, I was into documentary photography, always dealing with real people, cities, their concerns, and moving to Mumbai. And Mumbai is a place where, for an outsider, it really takes a while to get used to it. You know, its dynamics, where you realize that the front page of all your national newspapers are often real estate, property, commercials. You are driving down, you are traveling somewhere, you realize there was a building that has suddenly disappeared, or there was a building under construction that has been completed. So there's this very visual and very tangible kind of experience of the city and the rapid pace at which it develops, within quotes, you know. I had also, in the early 2000s, 2001 or something, started teaching at this architecture school, Kamla Reheja Vidyanidhi College of Architecture, and have been working very closely with them, teaching them, and been in the at the center of these debates, you know, on urban subjects, on urban studies, urban redevelopment, or whatever the various names for it are. So the slum rehab process, or what is loosely called redevelopment, is something that's always been at play in the city. And we see it happening in a very, very aggressive form in the present moment. So something that was always at the back of my mind, something that was part of our experience as citizens of Bombay. And so I proposed a film to PSPD, and you know, this film then got made. So that was really, it was a sense of engagement with the city, and not just the city, through that, the world in general. And the forces that were really shaping our lives and society and people's lives, you know, that made me start on this project.
Okay, that gives me a clue actually. I didn't know about your association with architects and architectural institutions. Before we go into the content and intent of the film, what struck me is its style.
Is it?
Style.
Yeah.
And I found that it's not talking heads. We hear voices, and there are missing faces and voices. And the architecture stands for both, you know. They are talking about SRA and the officials and other things. So sometimes it is static, and sometimes it observes the arches, the blocks, the plinth and everything, and sometimes it's very mobile, even through the darkness. We see the walls painted with betel chewing, and we see the lifts not working, and somehow architecture becomes a character in the film to me. So was it your, did it evolve, or did you really plan it or had a strategy how to visually bring architecture to unfold the narrative of the film?
So as a photographer and a camera person, my first entry into a subject is through the visual, you know, through the visual and the experiential. And but that's only part of the reason why the film is the way it is. Definitely, you know, it was the space, the buildings, and the entire complex, and the city itself are characters in the film, and it was this very grandiose architecture of this particular project. This, I would like to point out, is a mid to late 90s project. Uh, you know, made in post-liberalization India, that entire, you know, kind of funding that came, through it, through the collaboration of governments, World Bank, NGOs that were supposed to be working with the people became people who would conduct surveys and hand over data to people who were, and builders, who would make these buildings possible. And so a lot of the architecture, if you look at it, those triple-heighted arches, those circular cutouts, those triangular cutouts, those rectangular cutouts, is visually very strong. You could almost use the word spectacular for it. And if you look at much of the slum rehab that's happened after this, these buildings in themselves are not so bad. What is bad is the master plan of that entire area, where you have a 7-story building, and you put 35 of them together with very little separation in between, And so if there's ever an emergency, there's no way a fire brigade can get there, and other problems that the residents mention in the film. Now, I started this, on the first 2 days. Now, this is a PSPD project. Their budgets were, and still are, well, now they don't fund film anymore, were infamously small, So it was a film located in one location, mainly, shot over 6 days. And we started filming, and we started doing some interviews, and this is 2010, when television news had already was beginning to become the monster that it became in more recent times, And to gain access, we had to tell people that this is going to be on Doordarshan, which it was, a shorter version of this film, because PSPD had a partnership with Doordarshan and with Films Division and many other organizations. So there was a hope that people would be heard, So what ended up happening was that while we were conducting interviews, there was a lot of concern and there was a lot of anger at what people had been pushed into, But a lot of that anger is also performative, because people had seen that kind of performative anger and a lot of screaming on television, on news. It had already become that. And that was happening with my interviews. And that was not a tone that I wanted for the film. I understand the anger, but that performance is something that I did not really want, for this film. So from the third day onwards, we stopped shooting interviews, and immediately all of that became conversational and not, screamed into the camera and into the microphone. So we put the camera away. So it all plays out over the experience of the space, as you described. And there are voices of both the residents as well as the experts who are speaking. And I'm inherently uncomfortable with this entire, process, this entire phenomenon of residents speaking a certain language and people like us, opining on it and speaking on behalf of them in English. There's a kind of very, very clear power hierarchy that gets established, and which I talked about yesterday as well, which I'm uncomfortable with. So it's still there, it doesn't go away, but maybe it gets softened by taking them off screen and just letting you look at the space and the city itself while people are talking.
Yeah. And I perfectly understand, because we as filmmakers are very tempted by the performance because it works for television and other, but you went much deeper. And that was a wonderful decision, I suppose, to refrain from what happens in, because I think it's a grandiose, sorry.
Nokia.
there is a much grand plan of setting up a trap, a vertical trap, and it has to be dealt in that level, because you show some carrots or utopian dreams, and
So what? Show what?
You show the carrots to give houses.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of utopian dream that you have your own house, like the other sections of the society have. And finally you end up, the moment you end up that you are ensnared, and you are actually, I would say, trapped. You cannot get out of it, but you were desperate to get out of that. So, Mukul, do you think it's a failure of the architecture, or is it the failure of the planning and policy? What do you think?
Not the architecture per se, but definitely the implementation and the planning and the policy and the collusion of all the other actors, that are involved in this. And this film got completed in 2010, 2011. It was screened in Delhi at the PSPT festival, and after the screening, there was an elderly gentleman who came up to me and said, "Look, I'm a retired PWD architect of the government of India. I know exactly what's going on. We all know exactly what's going on, And when I look at these buildings, I know they will not last another 10 to 15 years, because
Really?
this is now more than 10 years ago. And like you can see that no maintenance has happened. The lifts never worked to start with. They've gotten a little better now also, because now the slum rehab buildings are being built even higher, 30 stories or more. So they can't afford for a lift malfunction over there. Yeah, there are other problems. They're still very close together, so there's no light and ventilation. There are health concerns because of that. There are mental health concerns because of that. And this person said that, these buildings are not going to last. And sure enough, I started getting calls at some point from the residents over there saying this is going to go for further redevelopment. So something which was barely 15 years old is, at that point, was going to be brought down and built higher, which means, as the speaker in the film says at the end of at the end, that we'll be relocated yet again into a transit space, transit accommodation, until they give us another dream house, so to say, another redeveloped house. And that's we have no control over this process.
No, this is interesting. This reminds me of a film called Pruitt Igue Myth.
Sorry?
There is an American film called The Pruitt Igue
Yes,
Myth.
yes.
It was made around the same time, 2011. I watched the film. It was a curation by Madhushi Datta on a similar theme like this, and where this is in the U.S., St. Louis, where there were huge slum with the working class people, and the state, without involving third parties, like it was the state who built up huge buildings, and people lived there with a lot of dreams, a lot of aspirations, and everything was there. But in a short period of time, they abandoned the places because they could not stay there, and the place became a haven for narco crimes, gun culture, and it was unlivable. So finally they had to demolish the buildings.
I know, I've seen that film.
Yeah. So and you have used footage from films division films. So I was just curious, because when we watch the films division films, normally our perception is these are propaganda films, which emulates the notion or the ideologies or the ideas of the existing government. So, and these are famous filmmakers who made those. So I have not watched those films fully. You have. So how did these films help you, and why did you use them in this way that looks like a propaganda, but were they really critical, or how did any other films help you?
Yeah, so there are, I'll answer this, there are two aspects to this. One, of course, I have, majorly researched and studied film, and especially the documentary film, as an agent of recording and therefore making an image of culture, of a culture, you know. Films division was definitely an agent that was making films in a certain way, aimed at a certain idea of an ideal citizen, you know, which is your projected audience, you know. Yes, majority of them being propaganda, but like this PWD architect who met me after the screening, look, people at Films Division were doing a job, but many of them, really many of them, were sensitive, very competent to the point of being brilliant filmmakers, you know. They were completely aware of what's going on. You could go along with the propagandist route, or and there was this period in the late 60s and early 70s under first Mrs. Gandhi as INB minister, and then as prime minister, and then under the leadership of a person called Jahangir Bhavanagari, who was sent to pretty much reinvent Films Division. And all of these people were given the freedom to make films a little, you know, also from the citizen's point of view and not top down, you know, and also experiment with film form. And the kind of experiments that then happened are unprecedented, and they have not been repeated. Unfortunately, because FD has this terrible tag of being propagandist, and, you know, and yeah, maybe if you're just recording, you know, if you're just recording government schemes, in, you know, on the film medium, the films can also be quite dull and uninspiring. They have great archival value, but, you know, it's not something that you would really want to watch unless you're interested or invested in it. So there were filmmakers who were making these films, and this is a filmmaker that I have learned a lot from, SNS Shastri. And this film from 1972 called The Burning Sun is actually in direct conversation with Anand's film yesterday, Bombay Hamara Sheher, you know, and my film here, where he is invited to make a film on these slum rehab schemes in 1972, you know, for Bombay Doordarshan, which is just starting out. And he effectively interviews the chairperson of the Maharashtra Housing Board, the main person who is interviewed in the film, and just gives him a long rope to hang himself with. He just lets him speak, and he speaks utter rubbish, you know. What is a slum? It's 3.5 feet in height. They live like rats in holes. They're beggars, they're prostitutes, they're casual workers. I am a casual worker, you know. What do you mean casual worker? And what is this entire, you know, completely uninformed and contemptuous look at your own citizens whom you're supposed to provide for, you know? So Shastri, it's supposed to be a propaganda film, but he lets him say all this, and it's there in the film, you know, it's really there in the film. So it's for you to decide, is this person right, or is he completely, you know, yeah, he has no idea what he's talking about. So that film, and then, you know, this, and including the kind of statements that people make in Bombay Hamara Sheher, you know, whether it's the industrialists or other people, the elite, you know, are in direct conversation that way. Yeah, so that, and it's not just this film. I have an engagement with, you know, the archive per se, whether it's from documentary or even fiction film, to plug into a larger history, a cultural history, a national history, a political history, and cinematic history, you know. So I frequently draw from the archives in most of my work. So yeah, therefore this particular film gets used here, and there are other films that get quoted from while talking about yeah, the growth of the city. So, okay.
No, I mean, it's very easy to use archive footage.
Sorry?
And sometimes it's easy to refer to archive footage, but it's not. But your use of archive footage, I found quite balanced and blends well with the structure. And coming back to your film, our time may be coming short. I was intrigued by one of the conversations, I would say, with a carpenter.
Yes.
And it seems that he is quite rising up vertically, rising, going up in the ladder from that horizontal space, and she kind of intrigued me. I mean, is this the model? I mean, is he the right person, the right thinking right way, being diligent, being intelligent, and this is how rest of the people should behave and go up. And I was just a bit intrigued. What was behind your mind, actually?
Yeah. So, I mean, that person, Munir, is a carpenter we know. And he lays out his story over there, migrant who ultimately, through this process of redevelopment, acquires 3 houses, And it said earlier in the film as well that there are people within the community who actually benefit from this monetarily, And who are we to judge whether they should be making money or not, I mean, so if somebody decides to sell their SRA tenement, or, the fact that earlier you lived in an informal kind of settlement with a shared public toilet or not even that, irregular or no water supply, now you are in a building which has water supply, which has the privacy of a separate bath and toilet and a kitchen and one common room for everybody, Yes, on paper it looks like a very nice scheme that everybody is benefiting from, but in reality, in terms of its execution, it is the way it is, And a city is not getting any more water supply, any more. I mean, electricity we keep generating, but drainage, none of that is really being added to. So it is the unlivable mess that it is. So if in the process somebody manages to become wealthy, do they not have the agency? Do they not have the choice to do that? Will we say that, okay, I'll buy a bigger apartment, but you should not? So he complicates the story. He really complicates the story, and he really takes away from the victim narrative of the film. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's messed up. But there are people within the community, and one of the experts also says, who want to go ahead with it. And again, I personally am uncomfortable with the victim narrative in documentary. The very, very black and white, bad persons versus suffering people. So that. So yeah, if there is that section in the film in the second half where people are there in that entire space, but they're also having fun. There's a woman who is playing a video game. There are boys who are playing cricket. And you are not always performing victimhood. Or the filmmaker is not, filming only that or retaining only that in the edit. So, or that entire water filling sequence at the beginning of the film where there is a water cut and everybody is having to come down to wash their dishes and then their vessels and their clothes, and there's a kid who picks up a whole bucket of water and douses himself with it, and you'd say, oh my God, he shouldn't be doing it, but he is. He's having fun in the process. That is how life is. So why should I not really show that? And I would also extend it to the use of FD, where very often FD is used as the evil party, where you would use it as, pretty much to illustrate the ills of the state. Very valid. That's very, very valid, because it's recorded by the state and that these policies are, they have problems, they have genuine problems, but also the kind of work that people from within the state have done to critique themselves, to critique government projects, processes, and the act of filmmaking. There are a few of them who've done it, very, very consciously, Shastri being among the biggest of them, So I really want to highlight that. So therefore, his work gets, I use that quite a lot.
No, I now understand it better, because it is not a black and white statement that you are making or giving a solution to the problem that is raised. I'll tell you, the one moment I really got a big punch is when someone said that it's like a prison for an elderly person who lives alone. in 7th floor, and he or she has to come down, who maybe doesn't, the siblings or the son and daughters don't live with them. And it's a terrible isolation. And I have my little small experience of working in this horizontal spread of people while making this film Bilal, which I have seen. And what gave me that, of course, there is on this, on the ground level, there is terrible amount of politics, fights, quarrels within the inhabitants. At the same time, there is a strong feeling of community. There is a brotherhood, sisterhood, sharing, and it's a whole ethos of these people who live together that come in celebrations, inviting people. But here, it is isolation. They are getting isolated and trying to think that way.
Yeah, but as somebody in the film says, I don't want to romanticize the slum.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to romanticize the slum, and it's very clear there were 38 buildings here and not 35. Majority of them are Muslim inhabitants. Those are in much worse state. The one that I had access to is predominantly Dalit inhabitants, and it's much better in terms of its upkeep and maintenance and everything. And you can clearly see that, you know, when you make a settlement, when you make housing, you are supposed to provide amenities like community spaces, places of worship, places of cremation and burial, of education, of healthcare. Nothing. So that sequence where you can see people praying, offering namaz on a Friday, you know, in the hard top sun of April, you know, in front of the community space that in that entire complex, one of those has been turned into a mosque, you know. So, yeah, and if I really were to get into, you know, the details of garbage collection, of any kind of sanitation work that happens, you can just imagine, I don't really have to go into it. It doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen. If it's supposed to happen every day, it happens once a week, you know. Yeah. So, and this is by design. This is really by design and by neglect, you know, by systemic neglect that happens, you know, in the spaces. And then, of course, you'll say that people don't have civic sense. The one question that comes up afterwards is, after this film, is people spitting on the walls. Yes, it should not be done. Really, it should not be done, but that is not limited to class. That is really not limited to class. How many SUV drivers do we see on the street who roll down their window and spit and then move on, you know? So, yeah, those are things that really need to be implemented. And another reason why I firmly believe in the state, and therefore what organizations like FD and DD are capable of doing, FD of course has been shut down now, you know, is because it is really the will of the state that can bridge all these institutional agendas or their own, you know, requirements of these projects. It is really the state that needs to bridge it all and do it together, except if the state turns hostile, then, you know, but I would still, that is the organization that is supposed to bind them all together, really bind them all together. Therefore, you know, for me, even the state is not a villain. You know, there really has to be hope in that, and yeah, an urge to, and an urgency to engage with. So that's what.
And you showed a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Was there any purpose for that? Because for them, they sacrificed maybe the future. They came in and you.
No, it was summer holiday.
It was
summer holiday, and they were there. You know, they were there and playing, and they also brought a lightness to it. As against, they were disabled people. They were, you know, other people who would really, you know, have a different kind of energy. But yeah, I mean, the kids, the fact, I mean, and just one more thing, there are no talking heads in the film, but when people do appear, they're looking straight at the camera.
Yes.
So they're looking straight at the camera, they're looking at me, and through the camera, they're looking at the audience, you know, where very often what we as documentary filmmakers do is that we enter other people's spaces and we tell them, okay, now pretend we're not here and go about your business and we will make film. which is supposed to look natural within quotes. You know, that you perform your daily business and we'll film it. Nothing wrong with that. You know, we all do that. But here, I think, you know, it was the idea of a DSLR video camera was new, which looks like a still camera.
Yes.
So they would pose for the camera as if it's a still picture. And I was recording video. And I'm like, okay, I'm not staging scenes here. I'm not asking them to be, within quotes, natural, you know, because it's a documentary. If this is what they're offering and this is how they want to be represented, I'll take it. And therefore, those portraits of the residents, which punctuate the beginning, the middle, and the end of the film, looking straight at the audience, you know. And what is that gaze? It's the gaze of an empathetic outsider. I'm clearly an outsider.
Yes.
I'm not trying to belong. Yes. You know, I'm clearly an outsider. And that is the interaction, that uneasy yet friendly interaction that happens in that moment, which the film retains.
Yeah,
So,
it comes out very clearly, Mukul. And I may have more questions, but the final question I always have, I'm always fascinated by sound. I think you design the sound with a lot of care, and there are subterranean sounds, which are not noticeable, but it is there. And there you used music as well, which is not dramatic music, but so how did you did the sound design came during editing, or you had something in mind that goes in your head?
No, so it's something that, you know, worked with my senior colleague and collaborator, Suresh Rajamani,
Yes, of
you
course.
know, who's spent his life with documentary sound. So we decided we'd record location sound in stereo to get a sense of the entire space. You know, so we did that. And yeah, so majority of the sound is diegetic, you know, and besides that, we have hardly added anything to it, except the bed of what could be called a designed track or a music track by a British sound designer and composer Simon Fisher Turner, who is best known for his work with filmmakers like Derek Jarman. And he's been on the panel of the British Film Institute to design soundtracks for the silent films that they restore. So he's somebody who works with analog and electronic and every sound. So this was an existing track of his, which has all these layers, you know, which really has all those layers built in. And it's something that I had used on the rough cut. I didn't know him then. And it was working so well that I was like, I'll have a very, very hard time replacing this with something. So I found his mail ID. I managed to get in touch with him. I told him just how much I had admired his work, truly, and the work of Derek Jarman as a filmmaker in my formative years. And this is a film that I've made. It's a documentary on such and such thing, and you know, I've used this as a scratch track. Is there any way I can retain it? And he replied within 2 hours, saying, great to hear from you. You are most welcome to use it. And he sent me the link to download 3 hours of music, you know, free, open source, meaning, you know, completely, and that is the generosity of an eminent artist that way, you know, away from ideas of IP and monetization and everything. So he's somebody you know, whose music I'm happy to steal, and he's very happy to lend every time. Yeah, and this is an eminent senior musician, you know, and sound designer. So yeah, I mean that is really what makes your profession. It's very encouraging when this happens. Yeah.
It does give a lot of power to yourself, that if you believe in something, you can go ahead and ask for it. And
do we have time?
And any questions from the audience?
No, Nita.
No?
No, I think we're done.
Okay.
So, yeah, before we close, I'd just like to mention that my other film, which I made with Rohan Shivkumar, Lovely Villa Architecture as our autobiography, which is in 2019, is a partner to this film. Both are about public housing projects. This is about a slum rehab project from the late 90s. built by the government for citizens. The other one is about the LIC colony in Borivali West in Mumbai, designed by Charles Correa, which was completely different, really completely different, which was built as where architecture was used as a social experiment of bringing pretty much as a tool of social engineering for bringing people of different classes and communities together by designing the building in a way where you'd have a small house and a very large house next to it, community spaces where you'd congregate and interact and not isolated like this one. So that is where Rohan's mother still lives, and that's the other film. Both are similar duration, both produced by PSPT, you know. So yeah, for some of you have seen it.
Thank you very much. And
yeah,
on that
so
note, I want to mention another film, which is a Venezuelan film, and the film deals with an abandoned financial skyscraper, where the slum dwellers, they came and took over, and they made a vertical slum and made a community, cooperatives, and it ran. So there are different kinds of models and different. Sometimes it trickles up and down. So the dynamics goes on. And lovely talking to you.
thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.